All right, so Skip, where'd you grow up?
Sanford, North Carolina, and then
Okay.
high school in Raleigh.
Okay, very cool. What got you into pipe smoking?
Well, that was real simple. My father was a cost accountant, and he wanted to do a business of his own.
Okay.
And he was hanging around the Crabtree Valley Mall in Raleigh, and he discovered a tinderbox franchise that was up there, and he was hanging around there a lot and checking it out, and he eventually invested in one, and they had a location that was getting ready to be opened here in Homewood, and so he decided to buy that franchise, and we packed our bags and like Jed Clampett, and we moved we moved down here, you know. So that's really the way it started, and went through a nice training program in California for it in the beginning, and I think one of the funniest things about that, though, is as the training program was running out, the main guy in charge with teaching us all this stuff takes my parents aside and he says, "You know, I really hate to tell you guys, but Skip doesn't have what it takes to do this."
Wow.
And now I've done it for 51 years. Little do they know that guy's dead. He's dead. Probably no one that's in the whole group of people that we were there is still involved in the businesses at all. You know, so I'm probably the only holdout.
Oh, wow.
But I'm the one that didn't have what it takes.
Yeah. So, are you more of a cigar guy or a pipe?
No, I
tobacco
like
guy?
pipes a lot better than I
Are
do
you? Okay.
cigars.
So, if you were stuck on a deserted island and you could have one, even if it's not in production anymore, if you could have one pipe tobacco, unlimited supply of it, what would you think it would be?
We've already talked about it. It's the ephemeris. I
okay.
just love natural Virginias, and I always have. I started out, that was the first thing I ever had, and although it was a Cavendish, and we really never varied from that. I've tried plenty of aromatic tobaccos,
Right.
and I totally hate all of them, you know. and, you know, and the thing is, one of the guys at that class said, he's already been working, you know, and he says, everybody that comes in, I sell this particular tobacco to because it's my favorite. So, of course, we sell a lot of it. And instantly I went, gee, I don't like that idea, because I don't think you should impress upon people to smoke what you like, because you need to understand that everybody is different. Everybody has different taste. So you got this other guy who might want something with a lot of mint in it or something, you know, and you're standing over here saying, no, that's not good enough. I've got to have nothing I've got to have nothing but natural tobacco tasting. And another guy's going to say, well, I don't like it unless it has Latakia in it. So right then and there, I made that decision and never try to do that with my customers. We are not tobacco snobs. If a customer comes in here, we don't push them towards a specific thing. We feel them out. We want to know, what is this customer like? What is he telling me? Oddly, I have also discovered that they're always wrong. You know, virtually every single time they tell you what they want. Yeah. Oh, but what I want is like a sweet tobacco that's very mild. And you show them something like, oh, that doesn't have enough body for me. I want something stronger. And you're thinking, okay, sweet and very mild do not equate with stronger. It doesn't work.
Right.
Can you think of a single tobacco that's really light and sweet that's still strong?
I think, and how do you say that one more time? Ephemeris? Mm-hmm. Is that ephemeris? So I think it being tied to nostalgia of your childhood is kind of cool. I think that's got a lot to do with in
might.
addition to it being a good tobacco, but that like bringing, I think that's awesome because there's a lot of things that I've tasted or smelled or whatever, and I instantly like it even more. But I think that's cool that you've got that story of
Yeah.
when you said 9 years old or 8 years old.
Yeah, something like 8 or 9,
that,
something
somewhere
right
in
in that
there.
category.
89. Wow.
So we also talk about pairings a lot on our show, like coffee with this tobacco or whiskey with that tobacco. Is there any favorite pairings that you have, like a drink of some sort, water, tea, something, anything really? What's one of your favorites, I guess?
Well, I'm actually not much of a consumer of alcoholic beverages, but I like an occasional beer, and I love Pacifico. So,
Okay.
it's a light beer, and to me it still has taste, and so when given a choice, that's what I would grab, and therefore, if I'm going to pair it with anything, it's probably going to be Pacifico, whether it makes any sense or not.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Pretty cool.
Otherwise, I could just get a glass of water
Yeah.
or tea. I love tea. I can do
Sweet
that.
tea or hot tea?
I like sweet tea. I'm a Southerner, dude.
American tea, not the
Yeah,
not the
I'm
British
not a
tea, I
funny
like that.
British dude.
Like this is like basically an old house, right?
Yes.
So how'd you land like here in this house?
Oh,
shop.
gee. Do you believe in miracles?
I do. Yeah.
Okay. The mall was on a downward spiral that I was in. The leasing agent contacted me and he says, "We got this great opportunity for you." And I thought, oh no. And he sits me down at this table and he pulls out this set of blueprints and he lays it there on the table. And he says, what we want to do is we want to move you from where you are at the top of the stairs in the very center of the mall to the opposite end, which otherwise equates out to the dead end of the mall where nothing ever happens and no human life takes place. It was just one of those things. And he says, what we're going to do is we're going to give you lots of room for your inventory because we're going to need you to move into a store twice as big. But we'll keep the square foot cost the same. And I'm thinking, gee, where does that get any better? So he hands me a copy of the blueprints. I thanked him. I walked out the door and I dropped it in the cylindrical file that was just outside the door. I went home and grieved about it overnight. Came back the next day, and my head's off in the clouds, because I think I've got to go. I've got to go. And I turned around, and right directly behind me was his old friend who was the original mall manager at Brookwood Village. And I start expressing my attitude about the whole situation. And he says, well, I have good news for you. I have just started working in commercial real estate. And I'm going to help you find a place. And he did. He found me this place in the same city and everything, but it wasn't zoned correctly. And he says, all right, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to set up a meeting for you, and coincidentally, it just turned out it was going to be Thanksgiving Day. And I was to go meet these people and see the inside of the building. Well, I sat down and I thought about this for a while. Zoning problem. I called the zoning board, got this woman on the speakerphone, and she says, hey, we can fix this problem with the zoning, but as soon as you sell it, it's going to revert back to the original zoning issue. And I said, well, that doesn't sound like a terrible problem for me. And she said, but I know of a much better place. And this place is a real dump. I mean, this place is awful. And it looks, worse than Fred Sanford's house, you know. And I said, gee, that's a great sales pitch there, you know. And so after she described it a little further in a better way, I decided to get in the car and we drove down here. The lady that owned it literally lived directly behind here, and I went over there and knocked on her door, and they had an antique store here is what it was. And she came over and we talked about it and looked all around, and the woman, the real estate agent that was handling it for her, she had just been into the office that I had just called for the zoning, and she had said, I'm getting ready to list it. And roughly 45 minutes from that time is when I called them, just by total coincidence. So the guy that used to be our store manager and his wife met up with my wife and myself, and we came down here again and we looked over the place. And I'm like, oh God, she was right. Where is Fred? it's a big one, Martha. You know? So I thought, well, you know, it's just this place is terrible. And my manager says, yeah, but it has a parking lot. And I said, okay. And so I decided, you know, there are no places for sale, only for leasing in this area. So I go back over there, we hook up with the real estate lady, make them an offer, and they took it.
That's awesome.
So about 2 weeks after we got the place cleaned out and refurbished, the real estate lady shows up. She's got this expression on her face that I am familiar with, and it's that expression you have when you really screwed the pooch and you know you got a problem. You know what I mean? Okay, so she comes in and you see, oh, this lady is all upset. And she says, I have a big problem. And I said, wait a minute, did I sign everything? Yes. Did I pay for everything? Yes. I don't see how this affects me. And she says, well, it really doesn't, but it affects me in a big way. What happened was, she never got it listed. There were numerous people who had been working with their real estate company for a long time that were looking for buildings that you could physically buy in Homewood, and they were not happy. And these people had a whole lot more money than I do. And she says, I don't suppose you'd consider selling this place, would you? I said, no, I think you know that I just spent a whole bunch of money refurbishing the building, and I can't find anywhere else to go anyway, so no, it's not going to happen. So she has to go back and explain this to her boss, who was very dissatisfied with her. And the rest is history. We're still here, you know, after 25 years. You know,
So being here for 25 years, you probably had some interesting people that have come in and out. What would you say was maybe one of the most interesting or famous people have come in?
Besides Scott.
Well, besides us. I mean, obviously top of the list. But
well,
your second most famous person.
You shot down my answer. Okay, I got one for you.
Okay.
John Hanna.
Really?
Yeah, you know who John Hanna is?
Yeah.
Little skinny fella. Just John Hanna has been here. Reuben Studdard. Do you know who that is?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, Reuben Studdard was the winner of American Idol.
Okay.
Season 2 or 3.
Yep.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Big heavy dude.
Yep.
You know. So yeah, he doesn't come in as a regular customer. He'll come in just every now and then. Oddly, he's a very reserved person, and he it amazes me that he got as far as he did because he really doesn't want people paying any attention to him. So he would come in here and it wasn't just buzzing with activity because that's just not what we have here, you know. And he'd like to come get his cigars in here. He'd buy his cigars and he'd leave and say almost nothing. But still, he was an interesting guy. And if you point blank asked him questions, you know, like what was this particular person like, he would answer. He was kind of fun to talk to. But yeah.
Okay. Now, I noticed you had a book on the wall from Eugene Sledge.
Right.
Any story behind that?
Well, he was certainly one of the most interesting people that shot
That
there.
was okay. You have my. I'm a history guy, so you have my attention.
Okay.
Okay.
No, he is. I had no idea what an important fixture he was in World War II history. No idea. He was just this guy that came in and bought tobacco from me. And so I always wore a Marine hat. One day I said, hey, tell me about this. I don't remember what we're talking about. Anyway, I said, tell me about this. And he says, well, are you really interested in this sort of thing? I said, absolutely. And he says, well, I've just finished writing this book. Would you like me to bring you a copy? Yes, please. I would absolutely love this. So he autographs this book and he comes down and gives it to me. And I can truthfully tell you that that is the only book I've ever read multiple times.
Really?
It is good. It is really good. I mean, he writes it as though he was a fly on the wall. He never did anything. But we all know that's not true,
right,
because you start running into other reasons to find out about him. There were not one, but 2 movies that were put out. One of them, he was one of 3 guys that they talked about, and then one of them, he was the guy they talked about, and I think that was South Pacific. I may be wrong on the name. Any case, I went down to Montevallo where he had taught for years, and the Marines were putting a plaque down in this courtyard area, and they were telling everybody about Eugene Sledge. And talking about interesting people, this other guy who was there, he was the producer for the Band of Brothers. And he gets up there and he starts talking about doing this and doing that. And he says, and then one day I had this conversation with I think he was a general, but the guy that was in charge of Easy Company. And he says, are you ever going to do anything about the South Pacific? And he said, well, actually, that's in the works as we speak. And he says, fantastic. Is it going to feature a specific person, or is it just going to be the South Pacific in general? And he says, no, it's about Dr. Sledge. And this guy just snapped to attention, saluted, and he says, he was one of the great American heroes. and, and, you know, who knew? Right. You know, I had no. He was very quiet. You know, he didn't say all that much. So one day, my wife and I went down to the D-Day Museum in New Orleans, and I'm walking in, and there's a big poster right above the door going into the side about the South Pacific. And I'm standing there, I'm reading a quote, and at the very bottom I noticed it's signed Eugene Sledge. And I've been down there a couple of times since then, and no matter what you do, if you go into the South Pacific side, there is some mention of him, but they change it. You know, there's some mention of him no matter what you do. When you go down, you'll see it. So, yeah, he was, I could not imagine living through what he survived. Right. You know, you read that book and it's like, Oh my God. Because, it's stuff like laying on a beach wearing all your Marine uniform and gear and crap, and then you have Japanese people shooting at you, and if you stand up, you're dead.
Right.
And so they had to just lay there, and they say that the temperature got up to about 110 to 115 degrees, and they're wearing this stuff, and they ran out of water. So yeah, we've had a few interesting people come in.
I'd say so.
Even music teachers come in here from time to time that are totally fascinating, right, Matthew?
So, talk about, you have ephemeris, you got dandelion, you're about to make the vapor to end all vapor, putting some perique in ephemeris. So that's the next blend coming out. But as far as the Briary, you got any big plans for what's the next 5 to 10 years look like here?
Well, I hope that we can continue to come up with great ideas about tobacco like that, particularly with the loss of Sutliff. Mm-hmm. Although, to be brutally honest about this, when I look over what we bought from Sutliff, it's like 70% aromatics. Well, the customer base, that's just not where they are.
Right.
And so they're buying much more natural tobaccos, and it doesn't have to be English tobaccos, but that's the direction that they're heading. And right now, it's absolutely outselling the aromatics by a long shot. Mm-hmm. So we intend to continue to we're going to use a lot of that Virginia that I bought for the ephemeris for other things. It's not strictly, it wasn't purchased only for ephemeris and dandelion. We want to be able to make other things because we have a lot of condimental tobaccos in stock that we're going to use for, to put Latakia in it or any type of oriental. We've got all sorts of stuff. And as you may have noticed, Pete stands out there and he's literally cutting this tobacco with scissors. That is not all that functional, though. It's one way to get it shaped the way you want it, but it isn't a way to do it because he's been working on it for several weeks and he hasn't made a pound yet. It's just he keeps cutting all these leaves up. But see, you're probably wondering, why do we use the leaves? Well, we use the leaves because there's a really nice assortment of types of things you can get. Now, the problem is that we can't find a machine that will cut it cut it coarse enough to be able to do it in a mechanized manner. And we can't keep it up doing it this way. So I'm going to have to find somebody who wants to sell me the base tobaccos without mixing it into something else.
Right.
Anyway, that's what I hope to do. I hope that we can keep on doing this kind of stuff.
Well, awesome. Well, Skip, thanks for having
Yeah,
us.
we appreciate
We
it.
love this place. Every time we're in the area, we try to stop by. I love the vibe, the ambiance.
Yes.
Great
Fantastic.
selection of tobacco and pipes, and you can hang out and smoke them. And
Yep.
I think you need to open one of these in Florida.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that'd be great.
So
Yeah, I think that's out of my
it's about a
field house now. And I don't.
little closer than 4 hours away. So
Yeah.
we love stopping in whenever we're coming
Yes.
through. But put one in Florida.
We'll stop more often.
Stop. Yeah.
Yeah.
Every night, just about. Yeah. So.
They got any 1899 farmhouses down there?
I'm sure we can find something.
Yeah, we'll figure something out.
We'll figure it
for
out. Yeah. We'll build it ourselves.
Yeah.
We'll just put $18.99 on it. Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks again for having us.
Yes, we
If
appreciate
you
it.
guys ever in the area, stop by, check out the Briary. It's a great place. Tell them the idiot sent you. It'll probably get you absolutely nothing, but
Make you look cooler.
It'll make us look cool, maybe.
Maybe. Yeah. If you've not checked out ephemeris, definitely check it out. It is a really good blend. It's about to be added with some perique, which would be the vapor. I think you said to end all vapors out there. I think that's quote Skip. I think so. Thanks for
Right.
Yeah.
The vapor to end all vapors.
The vapor to end all
Currently,
vapors.
3 different Virginias.
Yep.
So it's awesome.
So check it out. It's definitely worth it. He's got a website. Check it out there, or just come down here and get it. It's way better. But cool. All right. Well.
Sounds good.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Appreciate it.